Have you ever failed? I don't mean a small mistake. I mean a real, gut-wrenching, earth-shattering failure. The kind that makes you want to close the door, turn off the lights, and just give up. What if I told you that one of the most celebrated inventors in history was a master of failure? That his greatest triumph was born from 1,000 disasters? This is not a story about a genius who had a bright idea. This is a story about a man who walked through fire, literally. And it all started, not with a light, but with a sound. The telegraph was the internet of the 19th century. Wires crisscrossed the nation, carrying messages in a language of clicks and pauses. And a young Thomas Edison was one of its best operators. He was so fast they called him the Wizard. But Edison heard something else in those clicks. He heard a problem. You see, these messages could only go one way at a time. It was slow. It was inefficient. It was broken. And Edison, the Wizard, believed he could fix it. He believed he could make the telegraph talk back. He moved into a small, grimy workshop in Newark, New Jersey. It was filled with chemicals, wires, batteries, and strange, half-built machines. It smelled of ozone and ambition. He told his assistants, and he told his investors, "I will create a machine that can send 4 messages at once. A quadruplex telegraph. It will change the world." They believed him. They gave him money. They gave him their time. And then, he began to fail. Failure number 1. A short circuit. The machine sparked and died. Failure number 27. The messages became garbled, a jumbled mess of nonsense. Failure number 116. A prototype caught fire, nearly burning down the workshop. His investors grew impatient. "Where is our miracle, Thomas?" they asked. His assistants grew weary. The whispers started. Maybe the Wizard has lost his magic. But Edison, he saw things differently. He would look at the pile of broken parts, the scorched wires, and he would simply nod. He would take notes, pages and pages of notes. For every failure, he wrote down what went wrong. He wasn't collecting failures, he was collecting data. He was mapping a path through a dark forest by finding every single dead end. He would tell his tired team, "We have not failed. We've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." But the world doesn't pay for attempts. The world pays for results. And the pressure was building. The money was running out. The doubt was getting louder. And then, he did it. After years of work, after hundreds of failures, the quadruplex telegraph worked. It was a masterpiece of engineering. It worked perfectly. He had done it. He had proven them all wrong. The Wizard was back. The Western Union Company bought his invention for the staggering sum of $10,000. That's over $200,000 today. Thomas Edison was no longer just an inventor. He was a success. He was a man who had stared into the abyss of failure and laughed. He took that money, and with a vision bigger than anything he'd ever dreamed of, he bought a plot of land in a small, quiet village called Menlo Park. He was going to build a invention factory, a place where he could create a minor invention every 10 days and a big trick every 6 months. He filled it with the best machinery, the best chemicals, and the most brilliant minds he could find. Menlo Park became a beacon of innovation, a cathedral of science. And it was here, in this new kingdom of creation, that he decided to take on his biggest challenge yet. A challenge that would dwarf all his previous failures combined. He announced to the world, "I will subdivide electric light. I will make electric light so cheap that only the rich will burn candles." The world laughed. Gaslight was king. Electric light was a fickle, expensive novelty. A blinding, dangerous arc of light, good for nothing but street lamps. But Edison was undeterred. He assembled his team. He poured his fortune into research. And he set his sights on one simple, impossible object: a small glass bulb with a tiny filament inside that could glow for hours. And so, the failures began again. Failure number 301. The platinum filament melted after 2 minutes. Failure number 422. The cost of the materials was too high. It would never be cheap. Failure number 587. The vacuum inside the bulb wasn't strong enough. The filament oxidized and burned out. Months turned into a year. The mountain of broken bulbs grew taller. The investors who had cheered for the telegraph were now pulling their money out. The newspapers began to mock him. They called his lab Edison's folly. They said he was chasing a fairy light. The pressure was immense. His reputation was on the line. His entire fortune was evaporating, burned away in the brief, expensive flash of thousands of failed filaments. He tried everything, every metal, every alloy, every shape he could imagine, and nothing worked. But then, a thought, a memory, a spark in the darkness of his frustration. He remembered his days as a telegraph operator working with carbon for his early transmitters. Carbon was resistant. It could get hot, very hot, without melting. What if the answer wasn't a metal at all? What if the secret wasn't in some expensive, exotic element, but in something simple, something common? He looked down at his blackened fingers, stained from the oil lamps that lit his home. He looked at the lamp black. Carbon. The team worked day and night. They carbonized everything they could find. They created a fragile, thread-like filament of carbonized cotton thread. They carefully placed it inside a glass bulb. They sealed it. They used a powerful vacuum pump to suck out every last bit of air. This was it. Failure number 1023, or success number 1. They connected the wires. Edison himself threw the switch. It didn't melt. It didn't burn out. It just glowed. For 1 hour, then 2, then 13 hours. And finally, after 14.5 hours, the filament slowly, gently gave out. They had done it. They had created the first practical incandescent light bulb. The lab erupted in celebration. Menlo Park was electric with joy. The news spread like wildfire. The wizard had done the impossible. But Thomas Edison knew the truth. This was only the beginning. To fulfill his promise, he needed to build an entire electrical system. Generators, wires, sockets, meters. A whole new world to power his tiny sun in a glass bulb. He built a new, bigger lab. A state-of-the-art facility in New York. It was the future, made real. But just as he was on the cusp of changing the world forever, the unthinkable happened. It was a cold December night. Most of the workers had gone home. The new lab, packed with years of priceless research, prototypes, and secrets for his next great inventions, stood silent. A night watchman was making his rounds. He smelled smoke. Then he saw the flames. He ran, screaming the one word that could turn Edison's dream to ash. Fire! In a single night, decades of work were gone. Everything he had built since Menlo Park was gone. The financial loss was catastrophic. It was millions of dollars in damages. The insurance would only cover a fraction. As he stood there, an old man now, watching his life's work burn to the ground. What do you think he did? Did he cry? Did he scream at the heavens? Did he finally give up? This was not just a fire. This was the end of a dream. For 24 years, Thomas Edison had built his legacy. First at Menlo Park, the invention factory where he gave light to the world. And now here, at this new state-of-the-art complex in West Orange, New Jersey. It was the most advanced laboratory on Earth. Inside those burning walls were the blueprints for the future. The phonograph, the motion picture camera. Prototypes, formulas, years of research, all turning to ash. The financial loss was unimaginable. Millions upon millions of dollars, gone in a single night. The insurance was paltry. It wouldn't even make a dent. and as the sun began to rise on December 11, 1914, it revealed a horrifying sight. Where there was once a cathedral of creation, now there was only a cemetery of ambition. Employees, their faces covered in soot, picked through the wreckage. They didn't speak. What was there to say? And then they saw him. Thomas Edison, 67 years old. His hair was white. His face was lined with a lifetime of sleepless nights and relentless thought. He walked slowly through the destruction. He stopped at a pile of rubble that was once his office. He kicked a piece of charred wood. He looked around, his eyes taking in the total, absolute devastation. His son Charles was there. Charles later said his heart broke for his father. He thought the shock of this loss would kill the old man. He approached his father, his voice trembling. "What will we do?" he asked. "This is a catastrophe." All of it. Gone. Edison turned to his son. And he did not look like a broken man. He looked like a man who had just been given a new problem to solve. His voice was clear and firm. He said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Charles couldn't believe it. He thought his father had gone mad. But he hadn't. This was the same man who had looked at 10,000 failed light bulb filaments and saw 10,000 ways not to make one. He saw this disaster not as an end, but as a brutal, clean start. He put a hand on his son's shoulder and said the words that would echo through history. "Although I am over 67 years old, I'll start all over again tomorrow." And he meant it. That very same day, he began. He didn't go home to mourn. He didn't wallow in self-pity. He gathered his team right there, in the smoke and the ashes, and he started sketching new designs in the soot on the ground. The news of the fire had spread worldwide. The next morning, newspapers carried the story of Edison's ruin. They wrote his obituary as an inventor. But they were wrong. So wrong. Because something incredible happened. The public, seeing this old man's indomitable spirit, was captivated. Letters of support poured in. Offers of financial help arrived. His phone didn't stop ringing. His unwavering attitude didn't just save his company. It inspired a nation. Within days, he secured new loans. Within weeks, the reconstruction was in full swing. The fire had burned away the old, the obsolete, the clutter. It forced him to build a new lab, a better one, with modern equipment. It was a phoenix rising from the ashes. We started this story talking about a light bulb, about a man who failed 1,000 times. But now you see, the real story was never about the light bulb. The light bulb was just a single victory in a long war against failure. The fire, that was failure number 10,001. It was the biggest, most devastating, most public failure he had ever faced. And he greeted it not with despair, but with a joke, with a promise to start again. That is the real lesson. That is the core of the story we so often get wrong. We say, Edison failed 1,000 times, as if it was a difficult prelude to success. But the truth is, those 1,000 failures were the success. They were the training ground that forged a mindset so resilient, so unbreakable, that even total annihilation couldn't shake it. He wasn't a man who succeeded after failing. He was a man who understood that failure is not the opposite of success. It is the raw material for it. Every melted filament taught him what wouldn't work. Every skeptical investor taught him to believe in his own vision. The fire taught him that as long as he was alive, with his mind and his will intact, nothing was truly lost. In the years that followed the fire, Thomas Edison didn't just rebuild his lab. He entered one of the most productive periods of his life. He worked on improving the phonograph. He pioneered the modern motion picture industry. He worked on batteries for electric cars. He never stopped. He never retired. He never feared failure again because he had already faced the worst it could throw at him, and he had laughed in its face. So, let me ask you again. The question we started with: have you ever failed? Have you ever faced a setback that felt like a fire, burning your dreams to the ground? Remember the man who stood in the ashes. Remember that failure is not a stop sign. It is a guidepost. It is data. It is experience. The world will tell you that you have failed too many times. The world will tell you to quit. The world will show you the smoldering ruins and say, "This is the end." But you have a choice. You can see the ruins, or you can see a clean slate. You can hear the echo of the crash, or you can hear the quiet promise of a new beginning. The number of times you fall does not matter. All that matters is that you get up one more time, with a new idea, with a new piece of data, with a joke on your lips and fire in your eyes. Be like Edison. Don't just succeed once. Start all over again tomorrow. If this story inspired you, if it made you see your own challenges a little differently, then do me a favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button and subscribe to Edistry for more stories of the human spirit that changed our world. Because history isn't just about dates and facts. It's about fire, failure, and the will to rise again. Thanks for watching.